This is North Pod, a North Melbourne fan podcast, hosted by Jason Hunt.
Now the backs there are. He backs it. He kicks it. Oh, the fall from Dersma. This is the speed of the culture. 3 bounces down the wing. He keeps going. 4 bounces. Joining the chorus. The Can't Lose Kangas are AFLW premiers.
Hello and welcome back once again to North Pod. Just another week, just another win for us. You know how it goes. Feels like only several months ago we were winning games of football. And this weekend we've had 2 wins. The men were able to get the job done against the Tigers today, recording this Sunday. And the women's team were also able to get the job done on Saturday. So a double win weekend. Pretty rare for us, given the men's team wins are pretty rare. But finally, a win to give us some positivity going into the end of the year. Just the one game to go. This was an absolute must-win for morale. Certainly doesn't mean a lot in terms of the final standings and in terms of, draft and that kind of thing. But it was important that we got a win here in terms of how we feel about the year, how we compare to a team like Richmond who are also down the bottom. You don't want to feel as though, them having just bottomed out are also at the same level as us. So an important win, given the fact that we limped over the line last year. This is definitely a nicer way to end the year. There's still one game to go, but the last several games last year were horrific. So to get a win and an emphatic win at that at this late stage is important. Ultimately, it doesn't mean a whole lot. It means we'll likely finish the year with the 2 wins against the Tigers, 1 against West Coast, so 3 of those wins against the 2 sides below us, and then that win against Melbourne early on, which was fantastic, that win against Carlton in the middle of the year, plus that draw against the Lions. So short of a miracle next weekend, we're out of the bottom 2. We finished with 5.5 wins, and it's the little things. That's not something to kick and celebrate and absolutely sing down the hallways on your way to work, but it's improvement-ish from where we were last year and where we've been building from. Anyway, let's talk about the game, and we can look ahead to the future as well as we go. So starting with team selection, and there were 3 changes, couple of forced ones, couple of unforced ones. That doesn't make sense, but you get the gist. Bit of a mix. Riley Hardiman, unfortunately, with that concussion, he needed to take the week off, so you would think he'll probably be right for selection next week if we do want to bring him back for the final game for the year. And then Bryn Teakle and Zane Dersma were omitted. Dersma didn't play VFL. He was the non-playing emergency, so I guess you could say he's next in line and potentially could come back next week if things were to go his way. Coming into the side, Paul Curtis back from suspension, Jai Simpkin back from injury, and then Matt Whitlock in for his second game for the year, second game ever, replacing Bryn Teakle as that extra tall in the lineup, although he did line up as the sub. Was able to come on relatively early due to the Xerri injury anyway. I think he came on at quarter time, but yeah, certainly similar to his first game. His first game, he started on the field, but then was subbed out, and I thought that was pretty rough, the fact that he was dropped straight after that. So good to get him in, even though it was as the sub. We want to get him a little bit of exposure at AFL level, and this was a great game for it, given the opposition. It's not the toughest opposition. It gave him a chance to find his feet, and I guess we'll talk about that as the game goes on. I think getting Jai Simpkin back was important for this game. Get your captain back, your spiritual leader. I thought he played an okay game as well, but more importantly, I think it frees up someone like Sheezel, and boy, we will talk about Sheezel. There was some phenomenal individual performances, which you've no doubt heard about in this game. So I think, from the outside, it probably is a bit easy to underestimate the sorts of things that leading the team actually requires of players, and it's easy to think, well, they're just flipping the coin, that's about it. I do think it's more than that, and I think bring Jai Simpkin in that can sort of shoulder that load. It does free up Sheezel to have the game that he had. So I think that's important. He also played a solid game, Jai Simpkin, which is nice because he's had a bit of an up and down second part of the year, I would say. Final score, if you haven't caught up with it, North Melbourne 2015 135, defeated Richmond 13-9-87. The fact that we were actually able to end up with 2015 speaks to how accurate we were in the second half of the game, because the first half we were pretty inaccurate with our kicking. To finish 5 goals with 5 goals more than points, I think is quite remarkable in terms of how accurate we were later on. But yeah, 48-point winners, very comfortable, never in doubt. Three-quarter time the game was home and hosed, and it was just nice to cruise to victory. We didn't play the best last quarter. There was, we conceded 3 or 4 goals in a row at one point, so we did certainly let the foot off the gas a little bit, but a very, very comfortable win, which is pretty rare to see. I guess if we go through the game blow by blow, it wasn't the perfect start by any stretch of the imagination. Lynch was looking really dangerous early on. It looked as though he was going to take the game by the scruff of the neck and really make us pay. We did kick a really nice early goal. It was a coast-to-coast goal. McKercher kicks to Powell from the kick-in. We found Caleb Daniel. He found LDU in the middle of the ground, and he just took off, kicked long to Xerri, who kicked a goal out the back. That was a real showcase for the kind of ball movement that we'd see later on in the game. We didn't see so much of that in the first half after that moment, although there was another moment we were able to go end-to-end. We were able to get through their defence pretty easily sometimes, but we did get clogged up a lot of time. It's the old, if you get at the back, you're free, and if you don't, you're turning it over. So, that was a good early sign, but then, like I said, Tom Lynch really dominated the aerial battle. He was taking Toby Pink to the cleaners early on. He kicked a couple of early goals, took some some contested marks, and just I thought we didn't do a good job of stopping Richmond in their tracks, and we allowed them to get some confidence. I thought in the first quarter it was looking like a real dangerous kind of, feeling, because like I said, Lynch was up and about. The Tigers mids were on top, and they were locking inside their forward 50 for protracted periods. Toby Pink, I thought, was then able to half a contest with Tom Lynch to boost his confidence and find his feet in the contest. That was a long ball that went in. Pink was in front of Lynch, and he was able to get back and not give away a free kick like we've seen Chom do several times recently. He was able to get at least a body on Lynch and stop him from marking. And I think that brought him into the game a little bit. We also gave him a bit of a chop out. Logue spent some time on Tom Lynch just to mix things up a little bit and give it a different look, but yeah, if Lynch was kicking accurately, it may have been a different first half, because after those first 2 goals, he struggled to kick after that, which was great for us. Like I said, we were able to go end-to-end again, but Tommy Powell missed that last kick. It certainly, for me, that was the moment where I went, okay, like the Tigers are going to give us some chances today. If we're good enough, the opportunities will be there. So, it was an early sign. It's one of those early signs that could have become nothing if we weren't good enough to make it work. Because certainly, like I said, the Tigers were on top in the first quarter. I do think that we did well enough. We put some forward pressure on. Cam Xerri was attacking the footy really well. Like I said, kicked that first goal, and I thought he was attacking things really nicely, and he looked on, to be honest. It looked like he had that look in his eye, like he was going to just run helter-skelter at the footy every time it was coming his way. Simpkin reaped the rewards and had a nice goal to end that first quarter. It looked as though we'd steadied nicely. We were a little bit inaccurate, so we weren't able to take full advantage of what I thought was not a dominance, but I definitely think the momentum swung our direction in the second part of that first quarter. Like I said, we were inaccurate, so we weren't able to completely take advantage, but you could see the game starting to swing our way in that first quarter. It was just a matter of whether or not the Tigers were going to be able to go to another level. Second quarter started with Xerri's injury, so I guess actually I should correct myself. Whitlock must have come on shortly after that. Xerri, it looks like a knee in real time, but then it sounded like coming out of the game it was more like an ankle. Either way, it doesn't look like he'll be playing next week, so I think he's done for the year. And if you're going to do an injury, a serious injury, I guess from a supporters and a team perspective, this is a great time to do it. Don't know if the player feels that way, because they're about to go into their off-season. All of a sudden, they've got to go into rehab instead. But hopefully, it's not a serious injury. You'd hope it's something that's more like what would be a 4 to 6 week injury, and he's able to still enjoy that October period, I suppose. Look, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe it's even less significant than that, but it didn't look good either way. He walked straight off, or hobbled, limped straight off the ground, which is what meant that Whitlock was able to come on earlier than he would have been planning. And then I think what we saw is us starting to really transition to a good team in this quarter. Xerri was dominating in the ruck. I thought he had a really good game. He hit one down Paul Curtis's throat and he was able to snap a goal. Wardlaw pulled a shorter kick inside 50, which is exactly what we've been wanting to see from him. We want to see him lowering his eyes. He was doing it last week. He did it again in this game, hit Paul Curtis, who goaled. Again, he had a phenomenal game individually as well, Paul Curtis. I think we were starting to see us take advantage, whereas the second part of that first quarter, we had the momentum, but we weren't able to put the score on the board. This second quarter, we were able to do that a lot better. It was still a bit part. We'd kick a goal and then there'd be a 5 or 6 minute lull where there wasn't a lot happening in the game, and then we'd kick another. But we were building in this quarter, and I think we were starting to put our foot down and put some space between us and the Tigers. That being said, they were fighting back. So it was a bit of a seesawing second quarter. It ended with us, 8 points ahead, and that was literally 8 points. We were 6-11 at half-time to 6-3. So should have been further in front, but weren't quite able to, like I said, to take full advantage on the scoreboard. But we were able to do enough to build a bit of a lead and certainly go into halftime feeling good. I thought Geordie Payne was leading really well. He got a free kick and kicked a goal that put us in front. We were just dominating around the ground and just needed to put the score on the board. Like I said, bit of a sloppy second quarter. Sheezel was able to to kick a goal after a great clearance win, and it was a fantastic 1-2-3 punch in the middle with Tristan Xerri tapping it down, LDU generally winning the clearance, and Sheezel being that second or third phase and able to go inside 50 with him. Or just being a length where, maybe it was LDU out to Sheezel and then a hand pass to someone else. Like, the three of them were forming that really good kind of triangle offense where there was a lot of possessions connecting those three, and you could see what was going to be built in that second half between the three of them. They had a big half. Sheezel was massive in every quarter, but I think he really got going with his impact in the second quarter and carried that through after kicking that goal. In the second, he looked really dangerous in the third quarter as well. So like I said, 8-point lead at halftime. I was feeling pretty good. I thought, we're in this game, we've wrestled back momentum, and all we have to do now is go on with it. And it wasn't the best start to the third quarter. I thought it was pretty shaky. This is where Tom Lynch looked like he could take the game back, but he just didn't punish us, let us off with a couple of either just complete miscues or behinds. And then we made him pay. Geordie Payne, a really nice inside 50 kick to Paul Curtis, who again kicks the goal. He was just a really efficient player in this game, made the most of any of those opportunities. And I was really impressed with Geordie Payne. He didn't have a high possession game, but I thought his leading patterns were really good. His kicking inside 50 or kicking to teammates was also really nice. So a good game by him. And then I think we saw the backbreaker moment for this game. LDU just burnt 3 out of the centre clearance. Just took, I don't know how many bounces, plenty. Hits Jack Darling. Darling was able to finish. And I think that was where our momentum really started snowballing, and we were able to really take the game by the scruff of the neck. I think I've said that a few times now, but we got a run on, and this is where you felt like, all right, we're going to run away with this game, which is not a feeling I'm too familiar with. It's something that I had to check in with myself and really understand what I was feeling. But watching LDU stream away from 3 opposition players and hit Jack Darling more or less lace out in the corridor it's a sight to behold, and I think it's what we've been wanting to see from LDU. I think his second half of the year he's been cruising a little bit. We haven't necessarily seen the absolute best of him, but that was something special from him. Dylan Stevens marks a nice quick kick out and plays on as the whistle is late. Was one of those ones. So I think I haven't confused that very well. I've confused that a little bit. The Tigers had the ball deep in their 50. They had a quick kick out, and Dylan Stevens took the mark. He then didn't hear a whistle, so he went to play on. Then the whistle was blown for a mark, but then because he'd played on, it was called play on. It was one of those ones where you just go, he's a bit unfortunate, really. Didn't matter, though, because Jacob Gastani was in the goal square and he kicked a goal. And for me, that's when I thought we're going to win for sure. And at this stage, the game wasn't done. We would have been 4 or 5 goals up at that point, but it was the sort of thing where it went our way, we were able to capitalise, and they're the sorts of things that happen on days where you win games. So it was nice to see things going our way. It was nice for Constantia to find himself on the scoreboard. He's struggled to do that in the second part of the year. I thought Whitlock was getting to some contests, but he certainly looked pretty raw in the forward half. I think probably a little bit similar to Chom. He might be better suited to defence to start his career. I'm not too worried about this year. I'm more thinking about next year where we might want to play him. But at the same time, Will Dawson is looking like a really good key defensive option for the future. So we've got options. It's just going to be about figuring out what we want to do with those players. We kicked another clearance goal. We kicked several clearance goals in a row. Sheezel kicked another one, which was his second, and he was having a phenomenal game. I think that midway through the third quarter is when it really dawned on some people that Sheezel's game was going to be one for the ages. He was very quickly up to 30 touches and soared past it, kicked the 2 goals, like I said, and was having a phenomenal game. Trembath kicks it out of the ground, and essentially it was 77-43 then. So for me, if you didn't think the game was done earlier, I think that was possibly the nail in the coffin. It was really hard to see Richmond kicking enough of a score to come back at that point. We did see some fumbles in the defensive half, which gave the Tigers a response. McKercher was the final fumble, and that allowed the Tigers to kick a nice snapped goal, which kept them in touch a little bit. But Luke Parker's strong body and refusal to tackle and dispossessed allowed Tommy Powell to snap another goal, and that was the bite back. It was exactly what teams have done to us so many times, where they work really hard for a goal, they finally get one, and then we just went up the other end and kicked a relatively easy one or made it look easy. We've seen that happen to us so many times, so it's nice to be on the other end of it where we were able to kick some easy goals. Like I said, a lot of goals came from clearance. We were able to really win it in tight, and then we had really good spread. Every now and then we'd turn it over and we'd get burnt because we were running really hard offensively, and it's one of those ones where it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you do right, the more that goes right for you, and then all of a sudden you're running to the right positions. And we saw that so often, I thought. And then we came to what I think is the goal of the game, and potentially the moment of the game. Paul Curtis snaps one of the goals of the year for North from the pocket. I'll talk a little bit about it later on, but I guess it's the same pocket that he kicked his goal of the year nomination from that game against the Swans a couple of years ago at Marvel. Same pocket, different kind of kick. Snapped this one across his body, which was a really tough angle. He's in the forward left-hand pocket. He's kicked it with his left foot, so really the margin for error is so slim, and it just went straight over the goal umpire's head. An amazing goal, and again, just showcased the fact that we were on and that we were kicking accurately and we were putting our foot down. Just an absolute bag from him. I think that was his 4th goal. He went on to have 5. Trembath then had a really nice chase down tackle with the Tigers coming out of defensive 50, which created an LDU goal from 50. Yeah, we were away. 3-quarter time, this game was done. A bit of argy-bargy between Chom and Tom Lynch at 3-quarter time, and plenty of others got involved, but nothing really came of it. It's one of those ones where the feeling's kind of heading out of the game because of the fact that we're so far in front. To be honest, it's a funny feeling watching or sitting at 3-quarter time thinking we've won the game, and then just watching this last quarter with relaxation, like just knowing that we were going to win it. It has not happened very often at all in the past 5 or so years. Trembath was taking the mickey again in the last quarter. Took a really nice contested grab in the square and kicked his second. Paul Curtis then kicks his 5th. He was super efficient and dangerous all day, like I said. Whitlock did some crumbing and kicked one out the back. It was a bit of party time in this last quarter between those goal kickers with Trembath and Curtis and Whitlock getting his first goal ever. He was in the complete wrong crumbing spot, but it fell to him anyway, and you've got to finish your work, and he did, so congratulations to him. Sheezel wins another clearance with it for his 44th or 45th touch, whatever it was at that point, and LDU streamed forward and kicked a goal. There was so much going right for us. Even Griffith Logue was able to get in on it. He won a bit of a questionable 50-metre penalty on the wing, and then was brought to sort of 45 metres out and slotted his first goal in North Melbourne colours, I think, or if not one of his first goals in North Melbourne colours. It was certainly a rare thing to see him going forward. The Tigers then did kick a few late as the sizzle was going out of the game. There wasn't a lot left to watch except for the Harry Sheezel show, who it was all about, can he get to 50 disposals? How many can he get? The North fans, and I think most people at the ground, were cheering him every time he got a touch. And then just as he was about to get his 50th touch, he was ran down from behind. It was a really nice tackle from Morris Rioli Jr. Got him cold, and he actually didn't get that 50th kick. wasn't long. He was able to get his 50th, then his 51st, and he ended up with 54 disposals, which is an equal AFL record ever. I think maybe with Tom Mitchell, if I've got my memory correct. Just an absolutely filthy game from Harry Sheezel. Just took the mickey and did as he pleased, really. It's surprising to me that the Tigers didn't do something about him at stoppage. We saw last week at times he was left free at stoppage, and it ultimately didn't really hurt the opposition that time. But you can't tell me that Sheezel wasn't hurting the Tigers in this game. And I'm not even saying put a tag on him, like a hard tag, but they just had to be aware of what he was doing at stoppage, because he pretty much got involved every time, even if it wasn't the first possession. It was so often he was a chain in the middle part of that chain to get it out of a congested situation. So to end up with 54 was crazy, absolute scenes. It was a really strange statistical game, really, when you look at the games of LDU, Sheezel, and Tristan Xerri in the middle as well. Some absolute records being broken on this last game for us in Hobart. Yeah, crazy stuff. Trembath then kicks his third, so he's kicked 3 goals consecutively in his first 2 games of footy in a side that's not known for goal scorers, which is quite the introduction to AFL football for him. And it was a nice finish. It was a shame that Shees couldn't quite get to 55 disposals and break the record, but I think we'll be pretty happy and content with 54. And like I said, Kangaroos win by 48 points, 8-goal win. Can't argue with that. And I guess Tasmania is the place where records happen if North Melbourne's involved. We know about that buddy game in Launceston all those years ago. Now we'll remember the Harry Sheezel game at Hobart, our last home game in Hobart. Something absolutely remarkable from Harry Sheezel. So a win for North, a really nice win for North. And I guess it's now 1 game to go, and we hope that we can keep up some of that momentum going into the Crows next week. Story of the game time, and I think I've sort of alluded to it, but it was our midfield dominance that eventually won the day. Really, the 3 head honchos in there, Xerri, Sheezel, and LDU, were phenomenal. Xerri was enormous in the ruck. It was a really good battle watching him and Nank go at it. 2 really, really physical brutes just going toe-to-toe, and I definitely think Xerri won that battle. I thought Nank did pretty well, but Xerri was fantastic. And then when it hit the ground, Sheezel and LDU were just terrific. We got the ball inside 50, heaps in the second half, and plenty really in the second quarter as well, and ended the game 62-42 up for inside 50. So a belting in that. Won the clearances 49-40, so a 9 clearance win, and had 130 more disposals. So if that's not a midfield dominance, I don't know what is. Obviously Sheezel was getting lead the poisoning, I should say. He had the ball 54 times, but he wasn't the only one. There was plenty of North Melbourne players getting involved in disposals, which is not usually I feel like for most of my life as a North Melbourne supporter, we haven't tended to have those mids that just rack up disposals for fun. Like I think of Dane Swan for Collingwood back in the day. Like he's that quintessential. He'd get 30 on a bad day. We haven't typically had many of those types of midfielders that just accumulate for absolute. For fun, but this was a game where, like I said, Sheezel 54, LDU had 40, Luke Parker had 30. Like there was just our mids found so much of it, and we were so dominant in the midfield and around stoppage and around congested situations that we're able to then find the players on the spread and generally get it inside 50, which is why we're able to score so many goals. Despite the fact that we didn't have Larky up there as a target to kick to, it was just the volume of entries eventually won over, and you could kind of see the Richmond defence kind of their backs break a little bit because the volume just was so hard to handle. That second quarter, it was going in, and Richmond did a pretty good job of repelling, but they couldn't last forever, and hence Curtis was able to kick 5, and Trembath kicks 3, and Sheezel goes forward and kicks 2 or from the midfield. So really, really impressive midfield performance. when we win it, we look really good when we're able to get first hands on the footy. And I guess how often has it been said that we've been able to cruise to victory over the past 5 years? The question's always going to be coming out of this game, or at least for me it is, like, can we do anything close to this against a mid-table team next year? Are we able to take that next step and dominate St Kilda's midfield, or Melbourne's midfield, or Port Adelaide's midfield? Like, aside in that middle bracket that's the next rung up, can we do this kind of midfield demolition? I guess I think about the Melbourne game from the start of the year. That's exactly what happened. We won clearance after clearance. Xerri dominated Gawn, and we sliced them up. Like, we've seen us do it haphazardly. You could kind of say we did that in the Carlton game for patches, but we know that the end of that game wasn't fantastic. So yeah, I don't know. That for me, it's like a massive positive that we know we can do it. But for me, it's going to be more around, are we able to produce this kind of output, when the opposition is a bit stronger and not a Richmond Tigers team that's really young, coming to the end of the season. That's the question, but I guess we've got to be happy with what we're able to produce in this particular game. Shinboner of the week time and the North Podium voting for the second last time for this season. And it's got to be Paul Curtis for that snap from the pocket that I mentioned during Roo Review. He loves that spot. Like I mentioned, he's kicked a miraculous goal from that spot before, albeit on Marvel Stadium. But for a left footer, that's a really tough pocket when you're running towards the pocket or running towards the point post. He somehow snaps and like I said, slides it straight through a really small gap. Just a special goal in that sequence in the third quarter. It was a brilliant cherry on top, but to go with a career-high 5 goals, and it felt like a pretty effortless 5 goals for him. It wasn't as though he was doing some miraculous things besides this goal. I just think he was beating his opposition and being in the right spots at the right time. Yeah, but like this goal was something special. So Shinboner of the week for the goal, but also a fantastic effort for Paul Curtis. He also gets 3 votes for the podium whilst we're talking about Paul Curtis here. Like I said, 5 goals, career best for him. 15 disposals, 5 marks, 3 tackles, a goal assist. Just a really efficient game from him. Didn't really put a foot wrong. Wasn't missing some of those easier shots that sometimes he can do, and was really punishing every time he got near the footy. Took a contested mark as well, I think. So Paul Curtis, 3 votes, and Shinboner of the week for that. Just, yeah, I can't get the image of that ball sailing over the goal umpire's head out of my head. So 3 votes for Paul Curtis, but I've got to go backwards here slightly. Harry Sheezel has to get 4 votes for this game. I've always said, my policy at the start of the year was I was never going to give 2 players 4 votes in the same game. I've struggled to give out the 4 votes the entire year. I think I gave Tom Powell 4 votes in the Melbourne game maybe, and that might be the only example. But if there was a 4-vote game, there was arguably 2 in this one. I think LDU might be pretty close to a 4-vote game as well. But Sheezel has to get the 4 votes, 54 disposals, 2 goals, 7 marks, 5 tackles, 6 clearances, a goal assist, 8 inside 50s, 15 score involvements, and yeah, just one of the best games I've ever seen a footballer play. Sure, made a mistake or two. He kicked one across goal in the last quarter that unfortunately that meant that the Richmond were able to turn it over. I think they scored a goal from that. Certainly scored. Maybe it wasn't a goal. But, I mean, you get it 54 times. He did some phenomenal things with the footy and just looked like he was running around unmanned all day and absolutely punished them. The last sort of 10 minutes of the game was just a case of how many touches can we get him. So, sure, that inflates the numbers a little bit, but even if you take that away, he's having a high 40s possessions game just on pure impact. Certainly got a lot of uncontested ball, but also had plenty of contested footy. He did it all. Just, he'll be too humble to be, sticking it to Kane Cornes from the feedback that he got at the start of the year or earlier in the year. But I've got no doubt there'll be some people letting Kane Cornes know about this kind of game. And, Cornes will just take credit. He'll say, well, I challenged him to be better. So I think that's what will happen. That's my prediction. Who knows, maybe by the time you're listening to this, something's transpired in that space already. But yeah, Sheezel has to get the 4 votes for me. When we go to the 3 votes, I've mentioned Paul Curtis, and then the other 2 that I've mentioned a fair bit throughout the podcast, LDU and Tristan Xerri also get the 3 votes. LDU, 40 disposals, 9 marks, 7 tackles, 10 clearances, 3 goal assists, 1 goal himself, 12 inside 50s, 15 score involvements. You could mount an argument that LDU's game was actually more impactful than Harry Sheezel's, despite the 54 disposals. And in any other week, this is a 4-vote game from LDU, but unfortunately for him, Sheezel was just phenomenal. LDU stoppage work was fantastic. Like I mentioned, he had that one where he burst out and took 3 bounces, but this was the game where you go, all right, this is why we're paying him millions of dollars. This is why we've signed him to that long-term mega deal, because he's capable of this. And you don't need him to do this every week. This is a crazy game, like this is not his bar, but you'd love his bar to be somewhere between this and those like so 20 disposal games that he'll have a little bit too often. This was a game where most of his disposals were effective. He did a little bit of everything. Like I mentioned, the 3 goal assists, 15 score involvements, 10 clearances, just did it all. And this is why we're paying him. So hopefully he can produce plenty more games like this when we're actually we're a good team and we're playing difficult sides and competing with them. The other 3-voter, Tristan Xerri, 22 disposals, 18 tackles, 40 hit-outs, 10 of those to advantage, 6 clearances, a goal assist, 8 score involvements. And what I thought was super ironic and funny about this game was he had 2 metres gained from his 22 disposals. Now, the majority of his disposals were hand passes, and he's a ruckman. I'm not anticipating that he's going to be a massive long kick down the line every time, but I do think it was funny that his meterage was 2 metres. But 18 tackles, that's got to be close to a record. I haven't checked that. I think someone might have had 19 before. Regardless, Xerri's game was also immense. He was really good in the ruck. Certainly won the battle with Nankervis, and I thought that the physicality that Xerri brought was, back to the best stuff that he was doing last year and in the middle part of this year as well. So fantastic to have him back playing and in that kind of form. So there's the 4 and the 3, and then I've obviously still got plenty of 2s and 1s. I'll go through these a little quicker just because there's so many vote getters this week. So 2 votes, McKercher, 29 touches, 440 metres gained, 7 inside 50s. Just did what he's been doing all season at this point. He's been in the votes a lot, and another 2 votes for him for a great job distributing off halfback and mostly hitting targets. Luke Parker, 30 disposals, 5 marks, 5 tackles, 6 clearances, a goal assist. Just a really, really strong, solid game and led the way in terms of keeping a cool head and finding players when he was under immense physical pressure. George Wardlaw, another good game, 25 touches, 2 tackles, 5 clearances, a goal assist, 4 inside 50s. Followed up his really nice game from last week with another one, so hopefully he can round out the year and go into his 4th season with a lot of confidence about how he's tracking. I've really enjoyed the improvement in his kicking the last couple of weeks. I'm sure it's going to undulate. He's not going to be a perfect kick, but the fact that he's definitely working on it and showing some signs of improvement is really good. Cooper Trembath, 3 goals, 9 disposals, 4 marks, 2 of those contested, a goal assist. A remarkable second game of football from him, really. The first 2 games he's played has been absolutely phenomenal, so I couldn't go past him for the 2 votes. And maybe there's a little bit of that, the fact that my expectations for him are so low and he's far exceeding them, but I don't think you could criticise his game. Some big marks and 3 goals. Fino Sullivan is an interesting one. He had 21 disposals, 3 marks, 3 tackles. The stat sheet was not, that's not crazy, but he's just immense under pressure. He does not make a mistake, and I think what's underrated about his game is sometimes he gets some absolute hospital possessions and makes them look a lot better than they are. So just for the way that he's able to get himself out of trouble and find space, playing on the wing and off half-back, a really flexible role. Fino Sullivan, the 2 votes as well. And then the last 2 voter, Caleb Daniel, 25 disposals. I thought a really good game in terms of actually finding targets and being damaging. Some nice running, carrying and penetrating kicking as well. So 2 votes for Caleb Daniel. And then the 1 voters, Jai Simpkin, 24 disposals, a goal and 4 marks. I thought it was a nice return game from him. played his role mostly off half forward, but a little bit of time in the midfield as well. Tommy Powell, 22 touches, a goal, 5 marks, 3 tackles. This is exactly what you want from that kind of role-playing midfielder. He's not going to be the star of the midfield, but he knows how to find the footy, and he's a good link-up option and certainly plays consistently enough. So a good game from him. Jake Constanti, a goal, 12 disposals, 4 tackles, 2 goal assists. I think this is almost the perfect small forward game from him in that high half forward role. We know it's a tricky role to play, and I think he played it really well. He hasn't had it been as impactful in the second part of the year. I think there's been times where I've wondered if he might be dropped in the second part of the year, but I also understand he's playing a pretty unselfish and unrewarding role that can sometimes go underappreciated. So I'm appreciating him for this game. I thought it was worth a vote. Geordie Payne, 2 goals. Really, he's getting the 1 vote for the 2 goals, but I thought he had a really nice game in terms of every time he was near it, he was impacting it. So 2 goals, 8 touches, a goal assist, and a really promising, I thought, a step up from his first game where he looked like he was still adjusting to the pace. I think in this one he looked like he knew what he was doing, which I think is the most positive thing you can say about a player in their second game of AFL footy. And then the last one, Charlie Comben, 12 disposals, 4 marks, 1 of those contested, 8 intercepts. I thought played a really consistent, strong game off halfback. Not a flashy one, not one of those ones where he was flying across for mark after mark, but the ball wasn't going down there super often. So I think with the entries and forays forward that Richmond did have, I think Chom did a really good job of repelling and rejecting those. So to go over the votes again, 4 votes Harry Sheezel, definitely best on. Well, not definitely, but for me he was best on. 3 votes Paul Curtis, LDU and Tristan Xerri. 2 votes to McKercher, Parker, Wardlaw, Trembath, Foss and Caleb Daniel. And then 1 vote Jai Simpkin, Tommy Powell, Constanti, Geordie Payne and Charlie Comben. What that does mean is that Sheezel has taken out the North Podium again, back-to-back years. He's uncatchable now on 29 votes, sits 5 clear of Tristan Xerri on 24. So congratulations to Harry Sheezel. It's an interesting feeling because I think at times this year we've been a little bit like, how much more can we get out of him? But I think that's just because of the extremely high standards that we hold him to. He's had a very consistent year. Like looking at his totals across the year, he polls in most games, and obviously he's had some high voters, but he's had a lot of 2s, couple of 3s. That's what's going to happen. So he finishes, or it's not finished, actually 1 game to go, but he will finish on top. He's on 29 right now. Xerri on 24, and then LDU and Luke Parker tied for 3rd on 22. Colin McKercher is the only one that could jump onto the podium. He's on 20 votes currently. And then underneath that, Paul Curtis 17, Tommy Powell 15, Zerha 14, Larkin, Simpkin 13, and it goes on below. So congratulations to Shees for his back-to-back North Podium win. But yeah, 1 game to go, and we'll still see. There's still some things that could happen in 2nd and 3rd positions on the podium, and still plenty of movement that can happen through the other players in the field. There's lots of vote getters this year. Like I said, I think I'm pretty happy with how the voting system has enabled a greater spread of players to see themselves in the votes, which, you know, I think that's what we want. We want to be able to appreciate and talk about all the players, not just the midfielders. I say that looking at the top of the podium, and it's Sheezel midfield, Xerri ruck, Parker midfielder, LDU midfielder, then Cole McKercher halfbacker. So the top 4 really are mids. Anyway, we know football's about the midfielders. Let's be honest. Like to give a call to action. Just nearly at the end of the year here, I'd like to thank everyone for the support from the year. If you could, though, give us a share with any North Melbourne fans that you know. If you haven't already, subscribe on your chosen podcast service, and you can get involved with my social media accounts at NorthPod Show. Thank you to everyone who has supported me also on the Buy Me a Coffee link. You can find that in the show notes, or buymeacoffee.com/NorthPod Show. Really appreciate everyone's support this year again, and looking forward to one last game. Kanga, clipboard time, and I'm going to try and keep it pretty positive. You know, you win by 8 goals, you want to be able to look at the positives, and there certainly were heaps of positives, but also a couple of things, I guess, to look at for the future. I think first and foremost, it was great to respond after that shaky first quarter where Tom Lynch was threatening to win the game off his own boot. The fact that we were able to steady, we were able to put in place some things to stop the ball getting to him without that pressure, we were able to give Toby Pink a chop out in that way. I think it was also a good move to get Logue to spend some time on Tom Lynch just to give him a different look and give Toby Pink some time to regenerate. But I think most importantly, we started winning at the source, and that meant that the ball was going our way instead of towards the Tigers inside 50. So there would have been some serious nerves watching him mark everything in the first quarter, but once we started winning the ball in the midfield, it was more or less one-way traffic, and I think for me, that's a great sign of maturity, that we're able to take that punch, absorb that, and then figure out where we're going to, where we can exploit them and what we can do to get some scores on the board. So that was really nice to see, a really, like I said, mature way of going about things, and not something that I feel confident we would have seen from the team 3 years ago if we got a bit of a punch to the face, figuratively speaking, in a game 3 years ago against a side that we should be beating. I wonder whether or not we would have had that resilience to bounce back, but we do now, which is fantastic, and that's in spite of missing some important players like Luke McDonald, like Nick Larkey. There's still some important players missing from this side. You've got players like Geordie Payne and Cooper Trembath playing in game 2. There's still a lot of youth there, and the fact that those senior players were able to rise to the occasion and I guess coach some of those younger players through it, I think was really impressive. On the negative side, or I guess thinking about the key defensive stocks, it's a fascinating watch or thought for me where, Lynch was really dangerous. We still don't really have an answer for a player like him. You think of Jeremy Cameron a couple of weeks ago kicking 11 goals on us. Going into next year, there's still some definite question marks over what we're doing with our key defensive stocks. Now, we have options, don't get me wrong, I'm going to go through them, but I just don't feel supremely confident with all of these yet, which I guess is why we are where we are. So I really think Chom has to stay there as that floating third tall. The little evidence that we saw at him in the front half this year says to me that he is far better as that floating third tall that can come in and intercept mark. So I think he has to stay in that role. But the other two pillars are a question mark. And Toby Pink, he's capable of competing most of the time, but had Lynch kick straight, this would have been a very, very different set of circumstances. So, we know that he can play well, but he's also, prone to being ragdolled at times. I don't know if he is a long-term option. I sort of hope that he is, but I don't know that he is. Griffin Logue and Aiden Core are both senior players not playing up to the level at the moment. Logue is young enough that there's still time for him. Core, I'm not so sure about. And, I understand he's been injured the second part of the year, but he was dropped before that. So, it's not as though he's only out of the side because of that injury. The two of those have to be question marks in terms of whether or not they fit into the best 23 next season. I think Logue is closer than Aiden Core is to being in the team, but they're question marks. Will Dawson, I do think, is the future, but he's still developing. He's not quite there yet. So, if we think of him as a future pillar, I guess the question is next year, who's next to him and Chom as those tools? Is it Pink? Is it that we try and get Whitlock into that role in the future as well as Will Dawson, and we're just playing Griffin Logue there in the meantime so that we're not playing the two youngsters together? Is it that we think that maybe Jackson Archer can slide in and kind of play that third tall role and we then slide Chom up to be the second? That would require another significant leap in development for Chom, because we've seen him play on the more dangerous tall forwards and not be able to compete one-on-one. Maybe you can teach him to be better at that, but I'm not sure that's the best utilisation of his skill set. So there's a lot of question marks for me about how we go into next year and how we set up with our key tools. There's a lot of question marks over that. And then you look to the other part of the defence, and there's also a slew of rebounding, those medium, small defender types that I just don't know how we settle on 3 or 4 of them long-term, again, or even for next year. Like Jackson Archer, Luke McDonald, Riley Hardiman, Josh Goda, Fino Sullivan, Caleb Daniel, Colton McKercher, Zane Dersner has been playing that role late in the year. Essentially, a lot of those blokes are playing predominantly. Maybe if you take Fino Sullivan out, who's been pretty 50-50 split with the wing, the majority of them are playing that medium halfback role if they're in the side. Then you can also look at like Miller Bergman. I'm pretty sure his papers are stamped and we won't see him next year, but he's the same role. Darcy Tucker is another one that's been injured for the majority of the year, and if he's in the side, probably plays off half-back. So there's a lot to go through in the off-season in terms of how that's going to shake up for us in the long term. That's going to be a fascinating watch for mine. I guess going back to the positives, it was an absolute domination at contested footy, which is a huge relief for a team that's built on that philosophy. 159 to 124, so beat them by 35 in that role, and that's what you want. This is the team that is absolutely built around winning contested footy. LDU, Xerri, Sheezel, Parker, Wardlaw are all inside mids. Well, take Sheezel out of that, but he can be inside mid. He's more of a inside-outside, but all of those players are contested players. They led the way across the ground for contested possessions, and there was a real difference, I thought, in how we absorbed the physical pressure. We absorbed the tackle and still get effective disposals away. I mentioned that Luke Parker did that really well, but I thought that most of the team did that really well. George Wardlaw was much better at doing that. I thought this was the cleanest I've seen him play in the second half of the year. So a lot of positives there from the midfield. This is what we wanted our midfield to live up to. It's what it was billed as. We've been drafting such that our midfield is super strong and effective for the past 5 or 6 years. So eventually it had to come good. And it seems to at least we know it can fire. At least we know it can function the way that it did in this game. Cooper Trembath, I need to talk about. He just continues to impress me. He's kicked 3 again and just looks like a natural forward. Whereas, Whitlock wasn't as assured with his leading patterns and often was outbodied. For what it's worth, it's game 2 for him as well. I'm not off on him at all. I think there's plenty of upside with him. So this is not about bashing Whitlock. It's more around Trembath and how impressed I am with the fact that this is a guy that was playing local footy half a year ago, and all of a sudden he's found himself playing AFL football for North Melbourne and kicking 6 goals in 2 weeks. It's kind of incredible. It kind of reminds me of when we plucked Nick Larkey from obscurity as well. He was a regulation national draft pick, but 73, so right down the end. Cooper Trembath obviously was a little different as a mid-season recruit, mid-season draft, but he wasn't even our first pick in that mid-season draft. So there's a lot to like about what he could potentially bring in year 2, having a full preseason and gelling with the group. Sort of similar to what I said with I'm not being sold out on Whitlock yet. I'm also not convinced that Trembath is definitely the future. I'm a bit of he's going to need to convince me next year as well, but he's done absolutely nothing wrong in these 2 games. You'd expect him to play one more. In terms of him versus Maley, I think, he's ahead of Maley in terms of his impact when he's playing. Maley, I think, is a better mark, but Trembath's leading patterns and his ability to actually find himself in the right positions is really impressive. Maley obviously also can play second ruck, so he has that strength to his bow. There's a lot of different things you have to balance up, but yeah, Trembath has been immensely impressive and potentially is a really good sign of some positive development, which is something that we haven't necessarily had as a strength more recently down at the club. And the final thing, I just think it's worth noting, this mean wins that we're 5.5 wins for the year. We're currently sitting above the Tigers in 16th. It's not a good year, but from where we're coming from and where we're trying to head, it's the start of some growth and development, and we've been looking for that for the past couple of years. I'm not one to say this is a successful season because I don't think you could say that, but I think we are moving in the right direction. This was a win that we needed, but we've ticked it off, so you can't complain about that. Hopefully nothing crazy happens next week and we are able to finish 16th. I mean, technically, if we were able to miraculously beat the Crows, we could actually finish above of Essendon, which would be really nice. They've got 2 games left, of course, because of their postponed game from the start of the year, but you wouldn't expect them to win either of those. So, look, miracles can happen. Maybe the Crows rest some players. I wouldn't think so, given they're playing for first spot, but you never know. So, yeah, I think positives moving forward for us. It's a positive end to the year game within this end part of the year, but yeah, one game to go. We can't rest on our laurels. We've still got to play the Crows next week. Finally, around Arden Street, and the final VFL game for the season was played. We were a loss to the Southport Sharks, 103-81. So they're all done now for the year. The VFL players are done. There'll probably be no doubt there might be a VFL player that gets elevated to the team next week, but it'd be pretty rough given that it'd have to be due to injury. So potentially the Cam Xerri injury opens the door, but I would probably think that Zane Dersma is first up. In any case, Will Phil was solid again, 17 disposals, 9 tackles, 5 clearances in what could be his last game for a North Melbourne team. He's currently out of contract and it would be pretty tough to see him getting one. Robert Hansen Jr. and Finbar Maley both kicked 2 goals. Zane Dersma was the non-playing emergency, so we were not sure how. Well, I was going to say not sure how he went. I know how he went. He didn't went at all. They're really the only noteworthy things from that game. It was a loss, and there wasn't anyone that absolutely smashed the lights out. So it's hard to see someone jumping into the AFL side for the last round from that performance. And then I guess what I do want to spend some time talking about is the AFLW. It's taken me a while to get to this point, nearly about 50 minutes in, and I mentioned them off the top. But yeah, a great win for them against Geelong. I guess I want to say at this point, like last year, I covered them the same way I covered the men's side. I did game reviews, did a North podium for them, and followed them the whole way along. They're I was going to say winless. They're lossless year, their undefeated season, and eventual premiership. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do that this year. I really wish that I could, but it's been quite difficult. The podcast this year, as I'm sure most of you know, I've got a 8-month-old son, and he's hard work. It's been quite a busy period for life for me, and work is always busy as a teacher. So there were periods in the year where I wasn't sure if I could keep the podcast going. I really enjoy the podcast, but it is a significant time investment. So there's certainly been some tension created as a result of that. It's just, I've got to watch the game, I've got to make some notes, and then it does take some time to record and edit. Like, as a listener and as someone who spends a lot of time listening to podcasts, you probably don't necessarily think about it, but there's a lot of time invested in it. So the reason I'm sort of giving you context for that, which you probably don't really care for, is I just don't know what time investment I'm going to be able to give to the AFLW at this time. I do need a little bit of a break. The family needs a bit of a break. So it's just, I don't think it's going to be feasible for me to cover game by game. I certainly am hoping to still do the odd podcast, covering how they're going. And as the North Melbourne men's off-season is happening, I'm still hoping to be recording some podcasts. So it's not that next week's going to be the last one, but I just don't know that I'm going to be able to commit to game-by-game reviews for the AFLW this season, which does upset me. It does make me sad because I'd like to be able to. It's just time is a finite resource, and anyone who's a parent of young children or a parent of children in general, to be honest, would know that the ability to in your leisure time sit quietly and watch the game and make some notes and then record and then edit that is tough to find. So unfortunately, I do apologise to those people that were looking forward to the AFLW coverage. I will still cover it, but probably not in as much detail as I did last year. I'm not going to do a North podium for that just because I can't foresee me being able to deliver on it properly like I would like to. So I'll talk about the game while I'm here. And like I said, it was North Melbourne beating Geelong by 30 points down at the Cattery. Bit of a sloppy start skills-wise. I thought early on it was not the way that we would have wanted to start the game. I thought it took a while for us to warm up, and ironically it was when the rain arrived that I thought we actually found our way and actually started kicking some goals and getting some chains going. So not the start we would have wanted, but found a way, and eventually we dominate in the last quarter and win by 30 points. So a win's a win, and particularly given Geelong was the only side that we weren't able to beat last year, had that draw against them last year. It's nice to first round get out of the way and beat them comfortably. Bogue, I had to find out how to say her first name. I know how it's spelt, but She's an Irish woman, and I don't want to butcher it, but Bogue on debut had 2 really nice last quarter goals. She looks like another Irish jet. We know we've got plenty of Irish women in the side, and she looks like another that's going to be super important. Ariana Hetherington, I thought as the second ruck looked at home, was a great pickup. I don't actually know if Emma King is injured or if we've just decided to go with Hetherington instead of King, but I thought she looked really nice next to Kim Rennie, and certainly did nothing wrong in that second ruck role. It was fantastic to see Eliza Shannon in, and she had a fantastic game in defence. She was what I would consider one of the unlucky ones last year, was just on the outskirts of the team, but she came in and I thought had a really good impact. Must have done all the right things in the pre-season, because she was fantastic and looked like a far better player than she was last year. She was going for intercept marks. She was really confident out there and defended really well. I thought Elise Sheeran didn't miss a beat. She's come across from Richmond and slotted into that half-back role really nicely as well. No Emma King, like I said, no Vicky Wall, no Sarah Wright, no Emma Carney through injury, so plenty of competition for spots. Neve Martin also not in there. There's plenty of opportunities there. I think Vicky Wall's only just returned from Ireland, so I have a feeling she'll find her way back into the side. But yeah, it's looking like, well, and go figure, it's mostly the same team. It's looking like it's going to be a really strong team again. Sheila looks like she's gone to another level somehow, given she's in the back end of her career. But she looked fantastic. The one thing I do want to talk about from the game, I guess I should say, like, Garner was phenomenal. But between Garner and Riddell, I don't know how many times the two of them connected, but it felt like a lot. There was a lot of Jazz Garner to Ash Riddell handballs that then Riddell kicked on. The combination between those two continued to blossom. And yeah, 30-point winners. The part that I want to quickly talk about, which I hated, was the way that holding the ball was being umpired and adjudicated for AFLW for this year. I didn't realise there'd been an adjustment. As I was watching it, I was thinking, what on earth is happening? And I had to do some Googling, and they have adjusted the rules so that essentially they've really tightened up on no genuine attempt, even if there was no prior opportunity. And I understand the reasoning for it. They want to reduce the stoppages and get the ball going. That's one of the things that sometimes the women's game can be a bit of an eyesore, because there are a lot of repeat stoppages, particularly in games played between lesser sides, I suppose, those sides towards the bottom of the ladder. So I understand the sentiment, but for me, it just swung too far, because there's not a lot of incentive to be first to footy. And we know that's kind of one of the core tenets of the game, is that you want to reward the player that wins the ball. And I don't think that was happening in this game. I didn't watch any other AFLW games across the weekend, so I can't speak to how it was umpired across the weekend. But in terms of that game, it was red hot. I think there was about 20 holding the ball calls, and for me it was a bit reminiscent of Auskick. It was kind of like, well, good try with that with that tackle, we'll give you a free kick. You didn't really even have to stick it. I guess the players will adjust, so I don't think it's going to be as bad as it is in round 1 as it is in round 10. Like, I don't know if I framed that correctly, but you know what I mean. I think by round 10 things will have evened out a little bit. But just on principle, I don't like the rule. So to be clear here, nothing against the umpires. That's how they've been asked to adjudicate the games. And I think it's not a great advertisement for the game when you just don't actually want to go for the football, because you know you're going to get tackled, and then you've got to flail your arms around like a dying fish. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I know that there's some people that think there should be a similar kind of ramp up in the AFL, and I hope that watching this in the AFLW, some of those people might realise kind of what we're dealing with and go, ooh, I don't want to see that in the men's game. So women's season underway, 30-point winners, really good to see. I certainly hope that they're able to have a back-to-back year, and I certainly will be watching them, but I just won't be taking feverish notes like I normally do for the other games that I cover. So next week I'll be able to talk about them again, because we've got one more men's game, so I'll touch on that next week. But yeah, like I said, I really hope that things start to open up for me a little bit, and I am able to talk a little bit more about the women's season. I can't commit to it based on how things are going for me at the moment. And finally, next week, I've already kind of alluded to it, so I'll go through it quickly. Last game for the year against the Adelaide Crows, Saturday, 23rd of August, the 1:20 game at Marvel Stadium. So early afternoon game, get it out of the way to start your weekend off right. It's 16th versus 1st, so not a prospect that you go, great, that's the game I'm going to go to, but it's a game of football, and it's the last one that we'll be playing until March next year, so it would be good to get along. I think we just need to compete, not get blown off the park like we did at the end of last year. The Crows could lose top spot to the Cats if they were to lose this game, so I would expect that they're going to play pretty hard. They might rest a player or two, but I think gone are the days where, like Ross Lyon rested half his team and Brad Scott did the same. What year was that? Anyway, I think those days are gone with the bye between the last round and the finals now. It doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. So I'd expect the Crows to play a pretty full team and most likely win pretty comfortably, but like I said, just want to see us competing. And the AFLW team, they're playing the next day, Sunday the 24th, 1pm or 1:05, I think it is, versus Port Adelaide at Arden Street. So there is a double feature opportunity for you this weekend if that's what you're interested in, I suppose. You could go Saturday and Sunday 1 o'clock games at Marvel and Arden Street respectively. But yeah, that wraps up the podcast. Bit of a longer one, but it's a win, so I'm sure more of you will be wanting to listen because you want to hear about all the good things that happened in that game. Just a good game to watch. It certainly made my Sunday evening a lot happier, and I'm sure there's plenty of North fans around feeling a lot more relaxed after that win. I hope you're able to enjoy the week as the winners in the office. Two from two on the weekend. Hopefully we can do the same next weekend, but even if we can't, lap it up this week. I will be back to talk to you next week. Thank you again for listening, and I'll speak to you soon. As always, go North. Thanks for listening to another episode of North Pod. If you give me a rating or review on your podcast service, that would be much appreciated. And please follow me on all social media at North Pod Show. I'm on X or Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and I'm also very active on the North Melbourne subreddit. Hope you'll join me for the next episode.